All right, I think we are recording. So I'm so pleased to have Alexis Brooks with us tonight. This is the second program that she's facilitated at CSC, just has so much wisdom and conveys it in such a warm way. Alexis Brooks is a registered dietitian who approaches nutrition through the lens of integrative and functional nutrition, meaning acknowledging the fact that our bodies are interconnected and therefore takes a look at the bigger picture while at the same time digs deeper to get to the root. With a master's in nutritional science, Alexis has over 10 years of experience working as a nutrition professional. She spent 5 years working at Kaiser Permanente as an outpatient dietitian, facilitating wellness classes and providing one-on-one consultations. She also worked as a clinical dietitian at one of the largest teaching hospitals in the LA area, Harbor UCLA. And now she has a virtual practice that she facilitates all the way across the country. And she's visiting in LA now. And we're so thankful that she's presenting tonight at CSC. So with that, I'll hand it over to you, Alexis.
Thank you, Rachel. I am happy to be back. I definitely enjoyed the group and the organization last time I spoke on an anti-inflammatory diet. So I'm happy to be able to have a new topic this time. We're actually going to kind of piggyback and build upon what I spoke about last time, which was really how to incorporate an anti-inflammatory way of eating without making it restrictive, without it being stressful. So we're going to kind of get into that. But we're going to make it relevant to this time of year. Right now, we are right in the middle of holidays, and I know it's a time that could be really fun when it comes to food. We're maybe having foods that we normally don't have throughout the course of the year. And sometimes this might pose a little bit of a challenge for us where we feel like we have to choose between, are we choosing between our health, or are we choosing between what our soul wants, what we're really craving? So I'm going to share some information about how we can really bridge the two to where we can still enjoy food, we can still partake in the holidays, but we can also keep our health in mind at the same time. So we will jump into that. So there's 3 parts really to the workshop today. We'll be talking about boost, so boosting nutrient density. This is really where we're talking about how we can make some of our classics, some of our favorites, the traditional foods, how we can really increase the nutritional content of it. Savoring meals, we still want it to be fun and exciting and something that we could fully enjoy. So how to savor our meals, and this information is something that we can really add to our day-to-day, whether it's the holidays or whether it is not the holidays, just a regular Tuesday evening having dinner. We could also learn how to savor these meals. And then the last part is to personalize it. We'll talk about how to use the information that I give you today, how we can make it a bit more personal to your experience, to your food preferences, and even to your treatment plan. And I'm going to look at the chat a little bit, but probably not too much. But please feel free to pop in any of those questions or comments that you have along the way. So we'll start off with boost. Really getting into how we are able to boost the nutrient content. And this is really building upon the anti-inflammatory diet. So first, giving a bit of a background on what anti-inflammatory is. It's really having foods that are high in antioxidants. And what antioxidants do is they help to prevent the cellular damage that come from free radicals. So free radicals can come from a variety of stressors in our life, from inflammation, from environmental stressors or toxins that can create oxidative stress. And that's just a normal, the truth is that it's kind of a normal part of living. There will be some oxidative stress that our body is exposed to. But the main thing is that we want to have something to combat that, something to fight the oxidation process. So antioxidants help us with this. These are some examples of antioxidants. There's actually so many more, but these are some powerful ones that you might be familiar with. So vitamin C, for example, we know that vitamin C is found in citrus fruits like lemon and grapefruit and orange. Even berries have it, broccoli. Vitamin E, we can mostly find this in fats. So it's found in oils, also found in nuts and seeds too. For example, like pumpkin seeds. Beta carotene is another one. This is mostly in our orange colored fruits and vegetables. But we can think of like sweet potatoes or carrots. Those are high sources of beta carotene. Selenium, this is found in seafood, like oysters, for example. We can even find this in Brazil nuts. Zinc, also in seafood, also in sesame seeds. And polyphenols, so this is like dark chocolate, for example, or dark leafy greens, green tea, are high in polyphenols. So these are some antioxidants and what they're doing in our body. So overall, having that antioxidant support can help out with our brain health. It can help out supporting the immune system. It can help out with our boosting our energy, but also our memory, our cognition, our heart health. So really from head to toe, this can be really helpful for us. So we may not necessarily always think about, let's have a lot of antioxidants in our Christmas meal, but or our holiday meals in general. But today, hopefully after today, you'll begin to think about, how can I add a little bit more antioxidants in there? So I'm going to give you 5 tips on how to do this. So the first one would be to add more plants. So really these antioxidants that I mentioned, they're coming from plants. So if we don't have a lot of plants in our meals, we're also having a meal that's lower in antioxidants. So we want to try to make these meals be plant forward. It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be a fully vegetarian or vegan spread that you choose to have. But if we can have some side dishes that are plant-based, that's a really great way to add in some antioxidants. So for example, maybe that means that we're doing like some crispy Brussels sprouts as our sides, or maybe it's like green beans, or maybe we have like a collard green salad where it's a variety of different greens, and then we are adding our favorite dressing, or maybe it's like a vinaigrette or something like that. So a fun way to just add some vegetables. So they can be cooked, they can be raw, they can be incorporated into a dish that we're already normally making. Maybe it's something that you just think of a vegetable that goes really well with something that you already have. Maybe it's throwing mushrooms into something, or maybe it's onions in there. Something like that could be a nice way, or even making it seasonal. Think about during this time what's available to us seasonally, like sweet potatoes and apples are seasonal, pears. Like, how can we add some of those things in there? Tomato salad, so going along with the, I guess, fruit / vegetable, having a tomato salad where we mix in having the tomatoes as the base, but maybe we're mixing in a couple other veggies in there too and adding a dressing to it. We can also add in nuts or seeds to dishes. Maybe we're topping something with nuts or seeds, whether it be flax seeds or hemp seeds or sesame seeds. We could really get creative and just play around with it this way. So this is one way to add some more plants. And the nice thing, when we add more plants, we are also adding more fiber. And this is an area that we tend to not really get much of, especially during the holidays. We tend to eat foods that are very low in fiber. And me as a dietitian, I often get the complaint from people that they are a bit backed up during this time of year too. So by doing this, we're adding some fiber in there too. So the second thing we can do to really boost up the nutrient composition is to flavor our food with herbs and spices. So we're going to get a lot more antioxidants this way, and it's really simple, right? We don't have to change the recipe entirely. We could just think of a herb or a spice that might work well with the dish that we're already making. Maybe you are making a pot pie. What if we add some sage to the crust that we're making, or to the filling? If we are maybe choosing to do stuffing or dressing, think about what kind of spices might be good in there. And these spices, they could be dry, they could be fresh, whatever your preference is, or whatever is available to you. Maybe you're doing a spice drink. Maybe you're doing like hot apple cider. What if we add some like cinnamon, adding I'm forgetting the cinnamon sticks, or adding powdered cinnamon, to our drink. That's actually boosting up the antioxidant power of it without doing anything super far from what we might normally be doing. So think about these herbs and spices, how we could add those in. And technically herbs and spices, they are also plants. And a side note about plants is that the more plants that we have, the more diversity that we have. So if we're choosing many different types of plants throughout the course of the week, it will also strengthen our gut health, and it will provide different, more of a diversity in our bacteria in our gut, which also improves our immune system. So another fun way to just add support really overall to our health. Okay, so this third one is one that gets missed often. So this is the PFF rule. And so the P stands for protein, the F stands for fat, and the second F stands for fiber. So what we're trying to do here is to create a balanced meal. So if you think of the PFF, if you remember that, that will help you to put together a balanced meal. A lot of times for the holidays, our meals are not so balanced. I would say that fat is there. Definitely fat will be in the many dishes typically, but fiber is usually lacking, and protein may or may not be there. Protein might be there as well, but generally I don't see the fiber part there. And the reason why this is so important is because having this balance, it helps to also balance our blood sugars. When our blood sugars are balanced, it also helps to stabilize our mood. It helps to stabilize to have a good restful sleep, and overall our energy levels. So when our blood sugars are dropping, our energy also goes down too. And once our blood sugars drop to a point to where our body is not comfortable with, it will begin to trigger a response to where it's going to raise our blood sugars. And so we'll end up on this roller coaster. When they drop very low, the way one mechanism that the body uses to help those blood sugars to increase is to basically trigger to us really strong sugar cravings, because it wants us to get those blood sugars up quickly. In that moment, we're not really craving high fiber carbs. We're craving really like high sugar things that will get us there really quickly. So that's where if you experience like intense sugar cravings, it could be because your meals are not balanced enough. There's probably not enough protein, maybe not enough fiber. So we want to make sure that we have that going on too, because when we're thinking about like a holiday meal, if our blood sugars are already low going into it, or if like they're already imbalanced, it will cause us to eat a lot. We will feast. And as I'll talk about in this presentation, there's nothing wrong with enjoying the foods, but we just don't want to overdo it. So having this balance here will help us to be balanced really overall. So protein, some examples could be chicken, fish, eggs, dairy if you're able to tolerate it, legumes like beans, chickpeas, also nuts and seeds are protein sources, tofu, tempeh are protein sources, fat could be avocado, it could be olive oil, avocado oil, actually again, the nuts and seeds are fats, and then the fiber can be vegetables, it could be fruit, it could be nuts and seeds, legumes like the beans I mentioned. So having those three components will keep blood sugars, energy, and mood stabilized. So number 4 is to make your plate colorful. So sometimes we might notice that the color scheme of our plate is all kind of the same color. Maybe there's the mashed potatoes, which are white, and then we'd have the macaroni and cheese, which is like yellowish and white. And then maybe there's like the dressing or the stuffing that's like brownish, and the turkey or the chicken or something like that, where it's brownish. And the general color scheme is like not a whole lot of different, it's not vibrant. It doesn't have a ton of different colors in there. And that example of that plate would also mean it's not really giving us a variety of nutrients, because nutrients are what I like to say, they're color coded. So specific colors correlate to specific antioxidants. So a way to just to approach having lots of antioxidants like in a visual way is to just look at your plate and see, how can I make this more colorful? Maybe I want to add some green in here. Can I get some purple? Is there a red in here? Is there something that's orange in here? And as you're cooking too, maybe that's something too, when you finish preparing a dish, maybe you think, how can I make this more colorful? Or how is this going to look in the setting of the rest of what is being prepared, so that I can get a nice, vibrant color and nutrient-dense palette across the board. And then the fifth one, this is still under the boosting nutrients, would be to experiment with different proteins. So in the same way that we would experiment with different types of plants in general, maybe we try to experiment with proteins. Maybe you kind of do a revamp of a classic dish that you usually do. Maybe you choose a different, maybe the recipe is the same, but you just choose a different protein that goes in there. Maybe you're trying, instead of ham, maybe you're doing chicken, or maybe you are doing something that's plant-based. Maybe you're there's something that chicken is normally in, maybe you try like garbanzo beans to put in there instead, just kind of playing around with different textures and different flavors in that way. But this can kind of help us break from the mold of the tradition, which tradition is great, but it can kind of liven things up and give it a new life. And bonus points if we're able to get some omega-3s in those proteins. So like fatty fish, for example, if we're doing salmon or cod, sardines, anchovies, something like that, could add in some omega-3s, which are always great to add in because they're going to reduce the inflammation. So they also provide anti-inflammatory benefits. We can also find this in plant-based sources too, so like walnuts, flax seeds are other examples of omega-3s. So after we have boosted those nutrients, now we want to think about, how do we savor it? So how do we get to sit down and enjoy these meals and these dishes that we've put together? So I want to go over a topic, a concept called mindful eating. So you may have heard this before. I feel like it has become a little bit of a buzzword over the past few years, but so it's becoming more and more popular. But I want to make sure that I review this definition. So mindful eating, it focuses on your eating experiences, body-related sensations, and thoughts and feelings about food with heightened awareness and without judgment. Attention is paid to the foods being chosen, internal and external physical cues, and your responses to those cues. So essentially, mindful eating is really being present with the experience of eating. We're engaging the senses. We're not being distracted and doing a lot of things at the same time. We're really thinking about, how do we feel in our body when we're eating, before we eat, while we eat, and after we eat. So the entire experience around food. And mindful eating can actually make eating way more enjoyable. It really helps us to savor our foods, because we're not just scarfing it down and then moving on to the next thing. We're actually like really sitting with it. But a foundational piece that we have to make sure that we're doing first before we even think about mindful eating is to not skip our meals. If you're skipping a meal, say for example, you are skipping breakfast or other meals throughout the course of the day, it could affect the what happens when we actually do sit down to eat a meal. So it could cause you to overeat, for example, because we're really, really hungry by that point. So similar to the example I mentioned with our blood sugars, once they get so low, it then triggers our bodies to kind of feel like we just have to have something, anything, and it may not necessarily be the best choice for our bodies in that moment. So trying to avoid skipping meals. And this could be really different from person to person in terms of like, what is the appropriate window to shoot for in terms of frequency of having meals or snacks or that sort of thing. But generally speaking, trying to make sure that you are nourishing your body on a regular basis so that you're able to maintain your energy levels, maintain your strength, and also to support your overall wellness, to support your immune system, your heart health, your brain health, pretty much everything. So making sure that we're first eating regularly. So the second thing is to put our bodies in a state of rest and digest. So our nervous system has two different states to be in. There's a sympathetic nervous system and there's a parasympathetic nervous system. We want to be in the parasympathetic nervous system. So this is really the state of rest and digest, where we are nice and relaxed. And when we're really busy, or we're kind of doing many different tasks, maybe different tasks back to back, or we're distracted by even if it's something that's a good distraction, like maybe it's your favorite TV show, or something like that, or maybe it's someone that you're on the phone with, that could be a really your body still sees it as a distraction, and it's not necessarily fully in a rested state. So trying to be as intentional as possible when we do sit down to eat. And this could be something as simple as breathing, focusing on our breath for maybe 2 minutes before we take our first bite, sitting down. Maybe we can have a place setting just to kind of make it a little bit more relaxed and a little bit more intentional. And if you would like, you can close your eyes and focus on inhaling slowly, exhaling slowly. And then you can begin to think about your first bite. But the importance here is that when we are in our sympathetic nervous system state, where kind of like it might be like a fight or flight type feeling, where we feel maybe more anxious, or just in general, just at a heightened state, we don't digest as well. So this is where we can run into issues of like bloating, constipation, diarrhea, heartburn, just overall not fully absorbing our nutrients. If the energy is diverted in other places other than our digestive system. And actually, digestion starts in your mouth. A lot of times we think of it as starting in like our stomach or our intestines, but it starts in our mouth. So even if you've ever thought about, maybe you thought about your favorite food before and you got excited about it, and you're thinking about like how the different flavors were and how it smelled and the texture, and you just like were really feeling like you're eating it. You probably notice that you begin to produce a little bit of saliva. So basically, is your body preparing for that food that you've been thinking about. It's getting ready to break down put out those enzymes to break down that food so that it will pass through your intestines and be able to absorb and everything. But that's just from our mind. So it does start from our mouth first. So keeping that in mind in terms of like what state that we are in when we sit down to eat. So the next one is to engage our senses. So as many senses as possible. This will make your meal more enjoyable, because it won't be something that you're simply doing just to pass the time, or just to say that you've eaten, but something that will become more enjoyable as you're noticing the nuances of each of these things. So this really helps us to be present. And even in this moment, as you're listening to me, maybe you take a second to become more present, an extra layer of presence, whether it be you touch the material of your clothing, the material of a seat that you're sitting on, the table. Maybe you listen out for something that you didn't necessarily hear before. Maybe you think about your sense of smell. What do you smell right now? Is there something cooking? Do you have something in your cup that you can smell? Maybe it doesn't really seem like you smell anything. Or maybe you have something in your mouth, or that's something that you ate recently that you can taste something, or maybe not, but acknowledging where you are with your senses right now. So this is similar to what we would do when we sit down to eat. So it would start off with looking at the food, looking at the color of it, looking at how it falls on the plate. Is it something that kind of like spreads when it gets plated? Is it something that kind of stacks high? What does it actually look like? Is it touching something else? And then if it's something that you actually would pick up and touch with your hands, notice how it feels in your hand when you pick it up. Is it sticky? Does it kind of stick to your fingers? Is it crumbly? Does it kind of leave a little bit of a dust on your fingers? What happens with that? If it's not something that you would pick up, you wouldn't really acknowledge that part. And then you would bring it close to your nose. So before it goes into your mouth, what does it smell like? If you're able to smell it, what does that sense of smell seem? Does it seem kind of pungent? Is it Does it smell sweet? Does it smell sour? Is it savory? And then put it in your mouth. And at that point, pay attention to the texture of it. Is it something that's creamy? Is it sticky? Does it break apart? When you chew it, do you hear something? Because we can also hear we can hear food. Whether when you chew it, if it's like really crunchy, you'll hear it in your mouth, or even when we talk about picking it up and touching it, maybe you hear it crunch in your fingers. And then at that point, noticing the actual flavors of it. Is it something that's sweet, sour? Is it bitter? And chewing it. So this whole process, it's actually much quicker than my explanation of it. It doesn't have to take that long. It actually could take a matter of seconds, really. We do want to chew our food longer than seconds, but the process of looking and acknowledging and bringing it to our nose and all those things, it would take seconds for us to notice that. And the more we practice it, you might notice that you enjoy food more because you notice the different layers that go along with food and just the overall experience. But in order for us to fully engage our senses, again, we can't be distracted. We have to be in a space where we're able to really focus on eating itself, not texting or emailing or on the phone or watching TV or on the tablet or something else. Taking those moments, investing in yourself as using this as a example of self-care, caring for yourself as you're nourishing your body. And slowing down, really slowing down. I think that's kind of the theme when we talk about savoring is really just slowing down and being intentional. Taking your time, even when you chew, taking small bites, and allowing yourself to thoroughly chew your food. The more you chew your food, the more you'll also, or the better, you'll also be able to absorb those nutrients too. So with every, as we're chewing the food smaller and smaller, the surface area, we're able to cover the different particles of food with the saliva and breaking down the enzymes. So it does end up being something that's a lot easier to digest versus us eating something in just a few bites, swallowing it, and then expecting our stomach to do the rest of the work for us. There is acid in our stomach and it does a really good job, but that's not one of its responsibilities to fully break those big particles down. So we have to kind of help out our stomach and the rest of our digestive system by chewing first and chewing well. You may have heard before 20 to 30 times per mouthful. Maybe not. You don't necessarily have to count. It could be a good guide as you like really are learning this and practicing it. It could be a good starting point for you just to kind of understand like, oh, this is how long I should be chewing for. But the reason why I say you don't necessarily have to count is because it really does vary on what you're eating. If you're eating yogurt, that might be interesting for you to be chewing yogurt for 30 times. But if you're eating something else, it might actually require that, or might require more depending on what it is and the situation, the context of how that ingredient is in the food. So again, it just goes back to awareness and seeing what's most appropriate in that setting, but being intentional with it. And the last one. So when we are going to our gatherings, there's usually a lot of food all over the place. Maybe there's like one or two or multiple tables of food where there's dessert table and there's the appetizer table and there's like the entrees and the sides. Maybe it's something like that. And sometimes this can be overwhelming, especially if you're trying to decipher what's a good choice for me. What am I going to put on my plate? I always recommend for people to take a tour or take a lap before actually making your plate. So maybe this is something that you do before the actual meal starts. So you're not actually, holding up the buffet line. People might be like, "What? You're gonna come through again?" But maybe it's just when the food is being put out, when you're just kind of like observing what's available, what's there for the dessert table, what's there for appetizers, what's there for the proteins, what's there for the color, right? What fiber do we have? What are my fiber options? Kind of thinking it in that way so that you don't end up going through the line and thinking, oh man, I wish I would have got that. I didn't know that was there too. Or, you end up with losing space on your plate and piling things. So we can avoid that if we actually take a lap first and see what's available. And then from there you get to choose what's a PFF, right? What's the protein? What's my fiber? What are my fat options? Again, likely you don't have to worry about fat during the holidays. It's probably already embedded in those foods, so don't worry about adding it on. But thinking about it that way just helps you be, again, more intentional. Another thing I will say is to try to actually sit down for these meals. So sometimes there might be a period where there's like appetizers or something to eat before the actual meal takes place. And we might have the tendency to grab a plate and then stand up near the food, or just in general standing and eating. That is a layer that takes off the awareness and the intentionality of eating too. So as much as possible, trying to see if you're able to, again, slow down and sit down and just relax. You can definitely still talk to people while you're eating, engaging in that conversation, but seeing if you could just kind of get into a little bit more of a restful state. So this last part would be to personalize. So maybe there's some things that I mentioned that don't necessarily apply to you, or you wonder, how can I adjust this for myself so that I can incorporate more of these things? So I'm going to review just a couple of things that might come up when you are thinking about how to boost nutrients, and then also how to savor your food. So one thing is to consider your level of hunger and your level of fullness. So if you do have less of an appetite, it's still important to nourish your body, but maybe this means that instead of having like three meals a day and like snacks in between too, maybe it means that you're eating smaller portions, but eating more often, so that you are still able to get the protein that we talk about that you need, and the fiber and the different nutrients, but you're just getting them in more of a bite-sized version throughout the course of the day. And really checking in with your body too. So checking in consistently, as kind of there'll be like a regular check-ins throughout the day of asking yourself, how do I feel? Do I feel hungry right now? Do I feel full? Does my belly feel like it's full right now? What's my energy level like? So really having a almost like an ongoing conversation with your body as a check-in, and hunger can be part of that check-in. Also think about your food preferences. Maybe there's a food that I mentioned today that you're like, oh, I don't like that food. But think about where that food, what part of what food group that food belongs to, and you can swap it out with something else in that group. So actually this morning I was talking to someone who said, I really don't like avocados. I see it recommended all the time, but it's just like a texture thing for me. It's weird. I don't want to do it. And I said, it's okay. You don't have to like avocados. We are all entitled to our preferences. We all have different preferences, and that's okay. But think about where that would fit into. It would fit in the fat group. So just making sure that there's still some sort of healthy fat in there. So maybe we're swapping it out with, maybe there's nuts or seeds that we can add to it. Maybe that means like we're adding hemp seeds, or maybe tahini to something, or maybe it's a nut butter like almond butter or peanut butter. Maybe it's drizzling something with olive oil, or maybe cooking with avocado oil. So just thinking about where the greater thing of like where that food is coming from, and we can always make swaps based on our preferences. Or if you have like a sensitivity, if you maybe you're lactose intolerant, there's a lot of non-dairy options there too. So knowing that you can switch to like almond milk or cashew milk or that sort of thing, where you can still enjoy those dishes that may call for that. I also want to bring attention to some side effects that could be happening alongside treatment. So that could be whether it be like nausea or indigestion or having a decreased appetite, or maybe even like food aversions. So for nausea, what could be helpful is having dry foods. So more of like crackers or dry cereal or toast. Maybe even having meals that are the top of the day versus the end of the day could be helpful. Like maybe the larger meal could be towards the beginning of the day. Maybe if nausea tends to flare like towards the middle or the end of the day, something like that. Trying to avoid having empty stomach. Many people say that they experience nausea more when their stomach is empty. So it could just be like snacking on some crackers consistently throughout the day, something like that. Ginger is also really good for nausea, if you're able to tolerate ginger. Peppermint is good too. So these can be in tea form. There's also peppermint oil. So it could be like something that you like drop in water and drink. Tablets, there's peppermint tablets too. So same thing with ginger. So those both can help with nausea and indigestion. We kind of touched on the decreased appetite. So trying to still be consistent with having something. It doesn't have to be like a large meal, but still having something. And trying to think about making it more protein forward. So maybe it's having like eggs or yogurt. Maybe it's a piece of chicken. Maybe it's tuna. Maybe it's having hummus with something. Thinking about ways to increase the protein and the overall calories and nutrition without necessarily adding more volume. Because when you have less of an appetite, you don't want to eat more, but you want to still get what you need. So if we have it in still having in a small portion, we can increase those things. Protein powder is a really great way to do it too. If you prefer like maybe liquid meals like soups or smoothies, we can add even an unflavored protein powder, and we can still get the protein that we need in a really small portion. Or maybe it's something like fruit. Maybe you're able to tolerate fruit really well, but fruit is it is generally low calories and it is low in protein. But what if we were to dip some fruit in yogurt, or maybe we had a nut butter added to like peanut butter or almond butter, something like that, so that we can still get some of that protein there, or again, like hummus or tahini, maybe we're mixing that with our foods. If we need a food to be more moist, like maybe if your throat is sore or it's hard to swallow, maybe you need food to be a little bit more moist. Maybe that means adding a broth to food that you're cooking, or maybe it needs a gravy or some sort of sauce. That could be helpful. And when it comes to food aversions, a couple of different things that we can do is, one, have foods that are cold versus hot, because when foods are hot, we can smell them and it could bother us more. It might also mean that we crack a window so we don't really smell the food so much. Maybe someone else is cooking the food, so we don't have to really be directly over the food smelling it. That could be helpful. And sticking to foods that are pretty bland, pretty neutral flavors. Like I mentioned, yogurt, if we're able to tolerate it. Also like the crackers, veggies, things that are pretty light and easy to digest. So those are a few things that we could do. If you're thinking about looking back at the presentation of making it a little bit more personalized for yourself. So that is all I have for you all. This is my contact information. So I do want to share my email, my website. Everything is Alexis Brooks Nutrition. So if you want to email me, if you have any questions, you can feel free to reach out. Alexis@alexisbrooksnutrition.com. My website, you can either do alexisbrooksnutrition.com or connect with Alexis. And all social media, I'm at Alexis Brooks Nutrition.
Thank you so much, Alexis. This was so comprehensive. And not only did you touch on kind of what to put on the plate, but how to put it on the plate and how to consume it. And I loved just the attention to kind of mindfulness and being present in the experience. Really appreciated that it wasn't only the what, but the how. One more time, I do want to share Alexis's website, alexisbrooksnutrition.com. I think it's that latter half of your email there kind of posted on the screen. So I encourage everybody to reach out to Alexis. I want to invite questions at this time, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording.